This time on Rad Rat Video, we're going to learn the impossible. Welcome to Rad Rat Video. Here on this channel, 3 times a week, we learn something new about skateboarding. Usually that's things like trick histories, game reviews, answering your questions on Series Ask Rad Rat. But today we're actually doing something on the Shred School. We're learning the impossible. So last year, I really planned on making a lot of these Shred School trick tips, but a lot of you know about my knee injury I've been working on. It seems like it's getting a little bit better finally, so hopefully I'm going to do a lot more of these soon. If there's any tricks you really want to see, let me know below, and if I can do the trick, I'll see what I can do about making a trick tip for it. So let's get into the impossible. With a little help from my co-host Vinny over here, we'll talk about how to do this trick. So to get started, there's really not a lot you need to know first, because you don't really build up to the impossible. It's its own thing. It's not really related to anything else. So as long as you can do pop shove-its, a couple different flip tricks just to be used to landing on the board, I think you'll be okay. It helps to be able to do pressure flips because of the way that the scoop starts, but you can always work around that if you can't do those yet. All right, so let's get into it. The foot position is pretty basic. Your front foot basically right about here, somewhere where you can just get it out of the way, somewhere really comfortable. You're not going to accidentally add in a flip or anything. So for me, it's about right here, a little bit before the bolts, but really hanging off the side. My back foot is usually right about here. So if you can do pressure flips, you generally have your foot about here, like more on the very tip of the tail, because you're trying to pop it and get out of the way. But with the impossible, you don't want to get out of the way. You want to have a nice solid foot position so that you can do that wrap. So I cover a lot of the tail. The corner, like my big toe is kind of right in the pocket right there, and that's how it works best for me. If you want to do it more vertical, you can kind of tweak it and go this way a little bit. But if you do that, you're more likely to land on the rail because you have your toe is going to be in the middle of the board as you wrap. You know, so when you pull it around, you might add in a little bit of a flip. So you want to be careful with that. Generally, like right there is about the way I do it. So you want to start with some decent speed, something you feel comfortable with. And then something a little bit weird about this trick is when you get ready to start the trick, you want to start to lean back a little bit, almost enough that you're going to slip out. And the reason for that is when you catch the board, you'll usually be about here. Because of the way it wraps. I'll talk about that in a minute, but you'll catch it here, and you want your weight to be back so that it's easier to actually slide back and land on the bolts. So that's one of the biggest tips to this one, to actually land it clean. If you casually try an impossible with really nice, balanced, centered positioning, you're probably going to land and fall off the nose over and over. So you do want to kind of push it forward a little bit, lean back a little bit, and then start the scoop. So if you can pressure flip, like I said, that's going to help a little bit, because what you're going to do is you're going to push down with your toes and try to get your foot over here, okay? And so it's kind of like a pressure flip, but not that much, because you are sticking with it, you're following through, you're going with it. So you may be thinking of an impossible like a straight back flip, where your foot's kind of helping along a little bit, but that's not really how they work in practice. So for me, a good impossible is one that's really stuck to your foot. It doesn't matter how vertical or horizontal it is. What matters is how well you're guiding it with your foot. So recently I tried to learn the zero flip. I guess some people call it a monster flip, which is just a back flip. You know, you just pop the board, it does a back flip, and that's it. You're not interacting with it at all. And when I did that, it looks like an impossible because I kind of follow through a little bit, but my foot's not actually touching it. And I posted on Instagram, a lot of people thought it was an impossible, but to me, that would be a really bad impossible, because as soon as it left the ground, I didn't really affect it. Even if my toe kind of lightly brushed against it, I wasn't guiding it, pulling it around. Okay, so that's how I think of a really good impossible, one that you really affect. And there's a few different ways to do that, which we'll talk about. So what you really want to do is push down on the toe side and scoop your foot like that. It feels a little bit weird to start off with, but you just have to get out there and practice it. It's really tough to to teach that with words. And there's really not a lot of ways you can practice it either. So you might think about standing next to your board and scooping down on it and practicing like that, or even doing it, you know, with a step off, like a no comply or something. But those aren't gonna help all that much, because the thing about those is that you don't have your full weight on that foot when you pop it. Your weight's on your other foot. So you're kind of slapping the board down. You have as much air time as you want to slowly wrap it. It doesn't really feel the same. So if you've been learning them like that, you know, the step off, no comply version, you're actually probably hurting yourself a little bit. If you're having a lot of trouble, it might help get the idea in your head, but you want to get out of doing those as soon as you can. So the way that the wrap works, one way I've heard it described before is that it's like an egg shape. And what that would mean, so you think about the way an egg is shaped, really wide and round on the bottom and then a little sharper on the top. And the reason for that is that's the way that the board sticks to your foot. So if you think about catching a regular trick like a kickflip, the only way it sticks to your feet the whole way down is if you keep pushing on it. Okay, you have to keep accelerating the board. That's what's forcing it to stick to you. And with the impossible, you have to do the wrap either faster as you go or sharper. And so with the egg shape, or maybe a spiral, would be wider and then tighter and tighter. And that really helps the board accelerate and stick to you. All right, so you scoop the board, you started going out here. About halfway through, the board will be sideways like this, usually, and your front foot's gonna be way out, or your back foot's gonna be way out ahead of you. It's gonna feel a little bit off balance in the air, and you might end up that way depending on how you catch it. But it really helps if your feet are out ahead. That's why you kind of push the board ahead. The board will be under you, but keep in mind your foot's on the tail and the tail's in the front now. So halfway through, it's gonna feel a little bit awkward, but it's gonna keep coming around. At this point, the way I like to do it is the board kind of flattens out and it finishes the wrap that way. And that's a little bit easier to catch. It feels a little more natural. There's a little more forgiveness if you are a little bit under or over rotated, it's flat already, as opposed to being a little bit, you know, back flipped too much. So that helps a bit. Now, how you're probably gonna catch it the first few times, I still even do it this way sometimes, is like this. And that's just because your foot wrapped around the board, or your board wrapped around your foot, and your foot's gonna land right about here in the middle. You'll even see pros do them that way sometimes. It's pretty acceptable because everyone understands that that's what happens with that trick. But you do want to do your best to avoid that for obvious reasons. If you're doing gaps or anything like that, you can easily break your board if you're landing in the middle of it. So if you push the board ahead of you in the air, like I talked about, your feet will be like this, but your body will be back here. And so you're putting yourself in a sketchy position, because if you land like this, you're just going to shoot out. But it gives you the opportunity to slide your foot back and actually land on the bolts. But that's only if you have enough height. So with the impossible, there's so many things to juggle here. You've got the height, you've got the wrap. You can do it really clean, but with a bad wrap. You can wrap it really well and have a bad landing because of the wrap. It's going to be up to you to decide exactly how you balance all those things out. But I think ideally you do a really nice wrap. You'd finish like this, and then you'd slide your foot back as you land it. But the exact way you do that is going to depend on your height and everything else. So one thing you might find yourself doing is you'll get to about 3/4 of the way around, and then you'll just kind of, let's say your foot's right about in the middle of the board, you'll just let go, let the board finish its thing, and then catch it on the bolts. And that's a very stable way to do it. It's solid. It works for gaps and things like that, but it doesn't look the best as far as the wrap is concerned. So I did a few of those. I'll show you what that looks like. And that's an okay way to do it. That's fine if that's how you want to do it. But to me, the best is catching it and sliding your foot back. But that's a little more advanced. You should probably learn it. Either just land it kind of badly and get used to the feeling, or do the letting go motion. But eventually, ideally, you're going to try to catch it and then slide back. All right, so that's what you're gonna do. You might land with your feet a little bit sideways sometimes. It's a tough thing to land perfectly bolts every time, but it is a really good trick to have in your arsenal. So that's the impossible. I made 2 other videos about impossibles. I did one about the whole history of it, which you can check out right here. I also did a compilation of the best impossibles of the 80s, which I found while researching that other video, which you can check out as well. But before I show you all of the videos to watch, here are some of the impossibles that I filmed. I show them to you in super slow motion. That helps more than anything I can say. And then you gotta just get out there and try it. The way the rap feels, it's its own unique thing. It's tough to teach, but hopefully this will be enough to get you on the right track. So after these clips, check out my other videos that I did recently and tap my logo to subscribe, and thank you for watching.